Yes, good morning.
Hi. Can we kindly ask you to turn on your camera?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And that's working well. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. Can we start? There's still a lot of noise going on in the room. Yes, thank you, Sahir. That was effective. So good morning again, and welcome to SCF members, observers, and the broadcast audience to day 3. Good morning to those here. Good night to others. I don't know. This is the final day of the meeting, and we have to really be finished at 6 p.m. So we are kicked out of here at 6 p.m. We have all, or you have all worked very, very hard over the last 2 days, and we need to make a special effort today to get things done, get things finalized, and we know that you will do it with the same constructive spirit that you showed all along. So let's work as one committee, a technical committee, and deliver the reports and products that we are expected to deliver to COP and CMA. We have only a few outstanding issues across the agenda items. And my co-chair and I would urge you to work together to find solutions on these issues and find the compromises. A big thank you to the co-facilitators. We have full trust in your leadership, and you have done a marvelous job so far. The Secretariat shared the schedule of today with you last night. And it says that we start with work relating to Article 2.1c, but we have got a request from the co-facilitators of the agenda item on definitions of climate finance, if they could go first because they are, or one of the co-facilitators is only available now at this time. I see nodding around the table, so thanks a lot for that, and we can start with definitions. Is it you, Diane? Please.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We have to present our, I think it was our third iteration this morning on behalf of myself and our my co-facilitator, Apollonia, who is online. And so, as you know, we had about 3 meetings on this. One in plenary and I think 2 breakout groups. And I would like to say thank you, Apollonia, and I would like to say thank you to the Secretariat for their hard work, as well as we had a really small group, as well as a contribution from our group. And so I'm not sure, Co-Chair, how you want to proceed today, but we've circulated the updated version of the document. And do we put it on the screen? I'm guided by you, or do we just take... do we open the floor?
I think we should put it on the screen as it has only arrived a short while ago and people may not have had the chance to see it.
Okay, thank you. So if you can just put it up on the screen, please. So as discussed yesterday, the work that we did on this document was some work had needed to be done on improving the quality. Quality here meaning how we are looking at our audience at COP and to help them to better understand how we did our work here at the Standing Committee on Finance, as well as to better explain the outcomes, and basically it's a mapping exercise of definitions that is being used at the national and at the international level. So we added some more context in that and structure it in that way so everybody could understand what we are doing, because as you can see for this document, we have no recommendations or conclusions, really. So, so we did that. We also did additional clarification to ensure that in no way the document suggests that we are picking any one definition or picking a definition. And we also made it very clear to clarify that there's a range of their definitions and their operational definitions. We've looked at all of the submissions. We have accepted submissions from parties. We have submissions from international organizations, data aggregators, as well as NGOs. We also had inputs through our discussions here. We had, as you recall, we had a seminar online, a webinar online as well, so we collected a lot of information. So we basically went through a lot of trouble to explain where the sources of information are coming from, so we have adequate attribution of the source of information to ensure that we're not making stuff up here at the Standing Committee, which is not good. So with that, the floor is open for any comments. Matthias?
Thanks, Dan, and thanks for all the work on this. And good morning, colleagues. I was just wondering whether, would it be possible to briefly see the track changes in relation to the latest version, or is it, if that's possible to arrange? Because I think the version which was sent out was also sort of a clean version, which is great, of course, but...
So can we circulate the last track changes version to everybody? I think that would be helpful as well.
Thanks.
Abdel.
Thank you, Madam Co-Facilitator, and we certainly appreciate all of the efforts, and we've been working with you for the past couple of days. And as you know, we had at the outset grave concerns about, it wasn't the correctness or the quality, but it was a question of the balance of the information in the draft report. And we had, if you recall, the reservations were about particularly section number 4, which is, I think, section number 5, about the definitions used by organizations outside of the UNFCCC. And we noted that the mandate was to take into account the submissions of parties. I think the language was, yes, it was, or take into consideration. Now, in our discussions, I think it was mentioned that, we discussed, how we went beyond the submissions of parties, and there have been submissions by non-parties, but our issue was that this section, section 5, previously section 4, had another set. I still don't know whether they were actual submissions or not, but that input was treated differently to the input submitted by parties. For example, the submissions by parties were synthesized, they were summarized, they were compared along certain dimensions, which wasn't the same treatment applied to the input from, I think it was the OECD, the MDB, IDFC, and the other organizations. Okay, yes, there are other organizations like the IPCC. I think it would be, no one would disagree. But some of these organizations or definitions, like those used by the OECD, are actually used by some parties who made submissions, which kind of tips the scale a bit. Now, again, we've offered surgical kind of modifications to the text to try to restore this balance. I can see that not all of it has been incorporated, but I think we would be better off if we just removed section 5, which goes over climate definitions by organizations or institutions outside of the UNFCCC, and just kept the section with the submission of parties, with the exception of maybe the IPCC definitions. I think that's appropriate to keep. So, because the way I read it, when we say take into account party submissions, I think when you say take into account, it's not just consideration. I mean, you need, because you're going to make a judgment call, right? If it's the COP, and if they form this judgment, it should be formed based on the submissions of parties. So I think the report would be better served if we removed section 5. Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah, so to the Standing Committee plenary, we had this discussion in our small group. And so the rationale, we've provided the rationale there, why there was no agreement on that approach in terms of structuring of the document. And the reason why that approach was not agreed is that the structure that we currently have, we had already discussed in SCF 27 and SCF 28. So if members, so on SCF 27, it reads the outcomes. The SCF held discussion on the scope of the mandate, including on the differences between definitional issues and accounting approaches, as well as sources of information and operational definitions of climate finance in use. So, and then we had another meeting SCF 28 meeting report, where we had outcomes to include inclusion of more actors, and also, so based on that guidance that we got from the previous two meetings, this is the way that we structured the report. Further, if we look at the information coming from the report that is used, is not just submissions alone. It's basically used the same data sources as the BA, which is logical, because the BA is where we're counting climate finance flows. So we'd have to look and see what definition they use to categorize it as climate finance. But included in that is the BURs and the BRs for parties that is also being used, and in those documents they do mention the OECD DAC, they mention the work that they provide financing via the multilateral development banks, and in the case of developing country, they receive funding from the multilateral development banks. And so that is why it's important. I mean, I'm just giving you the rationale, but we're throwing it out to the committee to decide how to structure the final report. So just wanted to give everybody that background information. I don't know if Apollonia wanted to add to this. Okay, well, she'll come back in, so, sorry? Oh, okay, can everybody's online, can you hear us?
Recording in progress.
Oh. Hello, can anybody hear us? You can hear, oh, okay.
Yes, I do hear you. This is Arihu.
Okay. All right, thank you. Apollonia, you're there? She's probably so tired. It's really early. Okay, so while she's getting ready, maybe I can give the floor to Gabriela.
Thank you, Diane and Apollonia. And in response to what we heard from Abdel, it's not just the climate finance which is accounted for in the BA. The mandate by the COP said building on the ongoing work, which has been conducted in the context of the BA, which always had a definitional and methodological annex included, covering all these definitions. This now is much broader and includes a lot more, but precisely the two elements you are in the disagreement with have always been in that annex, because they're a core element of the financial flows which are in the BA. So these definitional aspects have actually been in the core of the work that the COP has asked us to build upon. So to not include it would be kind of odd. The other thing is, I've said in the beginning that in our submission, we have a clear reference that, for example, the OECD DAC, the way the standards that are being used are one of the core elements, if not the core element of the definition we have. So if you would not include it, you would actually omit a big part of the definition we're applying. And so at least for me as an SEF member, it would not be an option to have it in the annex, because, as I said before, it's not going to go away. The definition is out there. If you don't put it in the report, it's actually less transparent than putting it there and make it transparent. There are these various definitions, and you may very strongly disagree with them, and that's fine. And we're not judging and saying this is great and beautiful and this is the definition it should be. We're just saying this exists and this is how it's built up, so that every party at COP can assess whether or not they like or dislike the definition, whether there's elements that they see reappearing in the various definitions across the paper, and so on and so forth. But if you don't display it, then people cannot assess it either.
Thank you, Gabriela. Anybody else? I see Uti. Uti?
Thanks. Good morning. I think Mohammed was probably before me in his virtual hand, but anyway, since he gave me the floor, I'll be very quick. Basically, just to stress that this is indeed an expert committee, and the Standing Committee on Finance has always taken the pride in actually drawing on all the wealth of information out there, and certainly, we have a very clear mandate from the COP. So that's the first thing, and we must respect the mandate. A second point is that while we may always often think when we get to the negotiations that all the knowledge and wisdom is in the submissions of parties, and perhaps, and at least sort of in my experience in the Standing Committee on Finance, we would not be able to produce the biennial assessment and overview of climate finance flows if it weren't for all the definitions and the analytical work done by the other institutions and data providers and aggregators, and from 2014 onwards, when we've been working in a way with the definitions on the biennial assessment, we'll always very strongly drawn on the work done by these outside organizations. So it'd be very, very odd, and I think it would not give any credit to this committee if we were now to basically say that the work on which the foundations of the analytical work of the committee is built on is of less value than the views of parties. So I would expect that it would be very difficult to present the work to have the product agreed by the SEF if indeed we were going to sort of move a very substantial part of the report to an annex. Thank you.
Thank you, Uti. Fiona?
Thank you very much, Diane, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, no, thank you for all the interventions. I think we can all agree that climate finance definitions is a very sensitive and sometimes political topic that we discuss in the context of UNFCCC negotiations and beyond. And what we heard clearly from colleagues over the last few years, in fact for quite a while, are concerns that there is not a multilaterally agreed definition. We also hear from other colleagues that having a multilaterally agreed top-down definition is actually not conducive to enhancing climate finance flows. And because of this disagreement, just for background, COP26 mandated the SEF to do further work on this. And the mandate is quite clear. It is not an assessment of which definition is better or whether there should be one or multiple. The language, the precise language is that we would continue work on the definitions of climate finance, which builds on the work of the biennial assessment, taking into account the submissions received from parties. So it's not based only on the submissions, but it's taking into account. It's much broader than that. And as Diane already outlined, we have agreed the outline of the report. We have agreed the structure over the last couple of SCF meetings. So I would not support deleting this chapter. I think it is important and it complements the rest of the work. The essence of the work is that we are looking at the various climate finance definitions that are out there, that are used by parties, that are used by multilateral institutions. That is part of the information that we have been asked to capture. If there is more information on some elements than others, well, then that's just the fact. It's the technical fact, and this is a technical committee, and it's our job to report that in an unbiased way. Of course, we know that this is a political issue, but I would certainly not support the removal of that chapter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, anybody else? Abdel?
Thank you, Madam Co-Facilitator. Just, going over some of the interventions of colleagues. I mean, it was mentioned that this was in the BA, so this would be essentially a repetition. Right? If it's in the BA, I think that's it wasn't mentioned in the BA?
I think what was meant is that the source of information is the same as we use in the BA. So the issue of definition now used to be discussed in an annex in the BA, so now we were asked to build on that work and produce a full document on it. So this is a full fleshing out of what we used to put in an annex. So you're suggesting that we put it back into an annex again, which is, I guess that's the idea of, I guess maybe you should explain a little bit more so everybody could understand. But so it's basically a building out of the small amount of work we used to do a definition in the BA into its own chapter. Similar to what we did with the 2.1c, we had chapters on 2.1c with the BA, and we were asked to produce a full document on it, which is what we did, and so on. So, so it's not a repetition, it's like we're doing what the COP said to basically provide more details, which is what is there.
Well, I mean, the way I see it, it's essentially what was mentioned in the BA, but maybe that's not, maybe there are slight variations. But my point is that I think we would be better served if we focused on the submissions of parties, and I'm not discussing putting it in the annex. I know we had discussions on that before, but I think at this kind of final round, I mean, it has to be clarified that there is no consensus on this section 5. And I think the report should just settle with the other sections that are mainly parties and non-party submissions, which were synthesized and summarized. But just going over the interventions of colleagues. I mean, I agree with Fiona that this is a very sensitive issue. And if you look at the positions of parties as far as the definition of climate finance, it's categorically different than what's offered in Section 5. Section 5 goes into technical detail, not just of finance, but the activities underlying this finance, which I see essentially is NDC territory. But the definitions by parties that were synthesized in the earlier sections of the report look at climate finance in terms of mainly, at least the developing country parties, in terms of means of implementation. So, there's a large gap between these two perspectives. And the way the submissions of parties, the treatment applied in the report was different than I don't know whether it's a submission until now of these other organizations outside of the UNFCCC, which are mainly used by a set of parties that don't favor a definition of climate finance. So I just think, we would be better served to remove Section 5 and just focus on the submissions by parties and some non-parties, even though that's outside the mandate, but that's fine. It's synthesized and summarized and treated like the other party submissions. The only exception, I think, with regard to the definitions used by other organizations outside of the UNFCCC is maybe the IPCC. So again, just to be clear, I don't think there is consensus on section Roman numeral 5 in the report. I think we would be better served, or maybe the COP would be better served if they focused on the submission of parties as mentioned in the mandate. I hope that's clear. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's clear. Any other comments? Matthias and then Gabriel.
Thanks. I realize it's sort of late in our meeting to maybe come with these kinds of suggestions, but looking a bit at the structure of the report and the title of Section 5, then, Operational Definitions in Use by International Institutions, one could say, at least from my perspective, the RIO markers are definitions used by us as a party. So in a sense, and that was the point of our submission through the EU, that we are using the RIO markers. So one way of maybe tweaking that, and I'm not sure whether that meets your suggestions, but to integrate then the RIO markers in the section where we explain the submissions, because the point of our submission was to say that we're using the RIO markers. And if that sort of helps, I would be happy to go along with that, as long as the section is, the text needs to be retained in the report. And I think if we're not retaining that, as our co-facilitator said, I think I would be interested to hear also why you see that this is a problem. I take your point that we have different views on what was the mandate and what kind of text we should be including. But for us, this is a sort of a key element in the report, because this is how we explain the kind of definitions that we use. So if we remove that, then of course we're losing sort of a key element in our sense of the report. So either sort of we can look at the structure, or we need to have a sort of a better understanding also on why we couldn't include it. Thanks.
Thank you. If I may take my hat off as co-facilitator to this report, and the push to get this report was something from G77 and China. It was not from the developed countries. So if we don't have this report, we're the ones who are going to have to explain that when we get to COP. So I wanted to say that, and it's important we are not clear. I wasn't in the room when it was negotiated, but I'm not clear from my colleagues what they wanted to achieve from this report. So we try to aim, myself and Apollonia, to give a wide range of information, and then when it gets to COP, then the parties that requested this could then take a look at it and then take their decision. So I just wanted to flag that if we don't have this report, that is a huge section of countries at COP that will be asking about this. So I'm appealing to everyone in the NCF that we could get a document going forward, because I wouldn't have to explain this to the G77 and China chair. Thank you. Gabriella?
Sorry, one last point. Question is it technically incorrect what's there? Is it technically incorrect? Because we do not, in any parts of the sections, anywhere, say whether we agree or disagree. We simply display technically accurate information, which was requested to us by the COP. If it's technically incorrect, then I would agree to say, well, or if there's disagreement whether it's technically accurate, then you could say there's disagreement in the committee. But if it's technically accurate, there's lots of information in there, I can tell you, lots. I do not like and I disagree with. But we cannot display this member, because there's probably every single element in the report you will have disagreement within the committee of the content therein. Not the technical accuracy, but whether we agree with it or not. There will always be at least one member who disagree with it on every single element in there, probably. That's not what we're doing. We just display technically accurate information, and if it's not technically accurate, we can correct it. But if there's no space to say we disagree or agree, because, yeah, as I said, many things in the report I would also disagree with. So I think we should just have the same approach across all documents, and especially across one document in its entirety, and not treat some sections like this and some others.
Thank you, Gabriella. So I would like to, I know we have a packed agenda today, so I'll hand back to the co-chairs. Clearly we don't have agreement on this text. Back to you.
Thank you, Diane, and Apollonia and all the members. We discussed among ourselves here at this end, and we think it's better if we go to a closed session now to figure out how we deal with exactly this kind of disagreements, whether how we should deal with products that are not universally accepted, what we do about it, and we need to discuss it in among ourselves in the committee. So I would ask the Secretariat to go to a closed meeting now. You already did it?
Good morning, SCF members. In order to close the meeting, we would have to move the observers who have joined the Zoom meeting. We would have to move you out. If you leave the meeting yourself, that's helpful. If not, we would have to move you out one by one to follow the guidance of the co-chairs. And for observers in this plenary room, you know where the breakout room is on the side. We would also request you to please move over to that room and wait till we can call you back or when the meeting is opened. And we are now closing the broadcast as well. Thank you.